to heal or not to heal? That is the question with the Adamantite auto rifle. Inflexibility is its own virtue, according to Sloan. However, I have to say this strand auto rifle is anything but inflexible. The support frame is a flexible and agile frame capable of healing allies and hurting foes. Harming targets builds a restorative charge. Hip firing at allies while this weapon is charged heals them with rapid healing, increasing allies' weapon damage and spawning unraveling projectiles. If we consult the Destiny Data Compendium, we're informed that support frames shoot slow, tracking projectiles, as opposed to most auto rifles being hit scan. And I do have to say that the projectiles are actually pretty slow. Like they're slow. They also have 50% increased aim assist fall of distance at 0 range, down to 25% at 100 range compared to a regular auto rifle. So you'll probably realistically be somewhere between the 40 and 30 mark. Dealing any damage generates weapon energy at a rate of 1% energy for every 4 damage dealt, reaching 100% charge after dealing 400 damage. Dealing damage with the support auto rifle doubles the weapon energy gains, generating 1% energy for every 2 damage, requiring 200 damage to fully charge. So the main takeaway from this is that dealing damage with the support frame builds up the weapon energy charge a lot faster, double the rate, but dealing any damage still generates weapon energy, so you don't even need to be shooting your gun in order to build up this energy, which you can then use to heal your allies. Targeting near an ally within range widens the reticle. Hip firing while an ally is in range will shoot healing projectiles that have stronger tracking, so when you're ADS, you cannot heal. Each healing shot consumes 2% weapon energy. Every healing shot fired towards an ally consumes 2% weapon energy and restores 13.3 health to them on impact. So the targeting range at 0 is 28, and at 100 range, it goes all the way up to 38 meters. So the more range you have, the further away you'll be able to be in order to still heal your allies. Upon scoring 5 healing hits within 1 second of each on allies, the next healing hit within 1 second of each on allies bestows them with an element matching effect and applies support frame boost to the user and the targeted ally. Support frame boost grants 10% increased weapon damage for 6 seconds. This stacks with everything. And in the case of the Adamantite, since it is a strand support frame, it causes allies to release 4 unraveling projectiles. Being a support frame, it would make more sense for this weapon to grant woven mail instead of releasing 4 unraveling projectiles. The main use case for the unraveling projectiles is for healing your allies while they're in the middle of like a group of adds. Those unraveling projectiles will then travel and hit the adds that are still alive, which in turn generates more weapon energy, so you can continue healing your ally without even needing to shoot at the enemies, while helping them do ad clear or you don't really care about the unraveling projectiles on a boss, but for sure it's mainly for ad clear, and you're able to heal your allies while keeping the uptime on that healing pretty consistent. So that is the main benefit of the unraveling projectiles. The base stats on the Adamantite are pretty decent, low impact, with they only being 21, but I mean it's an auto rifle, so I mean it's pretty decent rate of fire at 600 rounds per minute, so I mean it's shooting pretty fast, so this isn't the biggest of deals. 49 stability, not bad. 66 reload speed, pretty good. 70 handling, pretty good. 64 aim assist, pretty good. 39 range is a bit low though, and since we know that having more range allows us to be further away in order to heal allies, this is a little bit important. Well, I think it's a little bit important, to be honest. You can support me by hitting that like button. Moving on to perks, before I look at any of the traits or barrels or mags, we first have to take a look at the origin trait, Willing Vessel. Dealing damage or defeating targets with this weapon gradually grants increased stability, handling, reload speed, and charge rate. This effect gradually decreases over time, but is gained more quickly while near allies. Unfortunately, consulting the Destiny Data Compendium doesn't provide us with too much more useful information, mainly because of how complicated this perk is. This is basically target lock's S-curve, mixed with field tested on top of being actually damage based, so it is much harder to test. Sorry. Apology accepted, because, I mean, this is still an excellent resource. What is important, though, is what is listed. And at 5 times stacks, we do gain plus 30 reload speed. So if we consider something similar as happening to stability and handling, even if it's like plus 10, plus 15, which is probably, I mean, it's still pretty good. Like plus 15 stability, plus 15 handling for free at 5 stacks is pretty good, and something that you should consider, and something that I definitely considered. All right, with that in mind, if you do receive the Adept drop, you do have the option of running it over, but personally, in the case of the Adamantite, I don't think this is worth it. While within 15 years of allies, finishing a reload overfills the magazine from reserves by 10% of the base magazine capacity rounded up for each ally, maximum of a 50% overfill. This is not that bad, but compared to Willing Vessel and what it does, I don't think it's worth it. Also, Willing Vessel, the more stacks you have, the more the weapon glows. Learned that from the dev stream. With the origin traits gone over, now let's take a look at the barrels. So the ones that I didn't really discuss is recoil direction, which is 52 and has a pretty not that great pattern, which is where the first barrel comes in, Arrowhead Break. This is a lightly vented barrel that greatly controls recoil, granting it plus 30 in direction, and increases handling speed, giving it a plus 10. This, plus 40 stats, pretty good. And if we take a look at the recoil direction, it does greatly compensate that recoil. Personally though, because I am playing on mouse and keyboard, recoil doesn't matter that much. And this weapon in particular files tracking projectiles. So while a nice quality of life upgrade, I don't think it's the greatest, at least on mouse and keyboard. If you're on controller, you might want this. This is probably, it's like just stat wise, it's pretty good. Sure, recoil direction is like not one of the primary stats, but it's good enough. Chambered Compensator is a stable barrel attachment, increases stability by plus 10, moderately controls recoil by plus 10, and decreases handling speed by minus 5. Now, for all the reasons that Arrowhead Break is good, Chambered Compensator is not. I don't think the trade-off of handling for stability is worth it at all, and you don't get that much more recoil direction. So all in all, this is literally just a strictly worse version of Arrowhead Break. Corkscrew Rifling is a balanced barrel, plus 5 stability, plus 5 range, plus 5 handling. It's pretty decent. It's an all-arounder. It's pretty balanced. It's not the best, but it's not bad. Extended Barrel is a weighty barrel extension that increases range by plus 10, which is pretty good. IMO, the most important stat you want to increase. Decreases handling speed by 10, which is not great. I do like handling, and moderately controls the recoil by granting it plus 10. Now, luckily, because the Adamantite does have a pretty high handling stat, starting with a default of 70, Extended Barrel actually kind of makes sense here because it only goes down to 60 and improves your range by 69 and improves your recoil. So overall, what it's doing to the weapon, even though the minus in handling is bad, if we consider Willing Vessel granting us handling anyways, which I am considering for when it comes to these stats, Extended Barrel for the plus 10 range and recoil direction control is honestly not that bad. Fluid Barrel, Ultralight Barrel greatly increases handling speed by plus 15, which is pretty good. Slightly increases stability by plus 5, which is whatever. However, considering the fact that Willing Vessel does grant us stability and handling, I really do question how much handling do you really need on this auto rifle. You probably don't need all of this handling. So in theory, if you do get this roll, depending on whatever masterwork you have or whatever other trait you're getting in the second column, you could switch this on just in order to balance around the stats, but it's not the best option, even if it is, still a decent barrel. Full bore barrel optimized for distance. Greatly increases range by plus 15, decreases stability by minus 10, and slightly decreases handling speed by minus 5. IMO, this is probably my personal pick for barrel choice. Range is good on a support frame auto rifle for the previously discussed reason of, being able to heal your allies at longer ranges, and because some of the perks require you to heal and you get the support damage bonus by healing. As a support frame, you want to be healing. Being able to position yourself further away from the fight and stand a little bit in a rattier position in order to get those heals from a further distance is probably what you do want to lean into for this playstyle when using a support frame. So I do find that the maximizing your range when stability and handling is compensated by Willing Vessel is personally the best choice for me. Now, if you don't want to give up the stability in handling, you do have Hammer Forge Rifling, which is just plus 10 to the range. However, you do have to factor in Willing Vessel, and that's why I do think full bore is better in this situation. Polygonal Rifling plus instability, it's fine, but it's probably the worst option in this slot because it's not really doing anything for this weapon, to be honest. Small bore is another decent option, increases range, increases stability. Once again, range is definitely the most important stat you want to increase on this weapon, IMO. So first column, I do think full bore is probably best in slot for me. Then between Hammer Forge Rifling and Extended Barrel, I do think Extended Barrel is just the better option because it does help control that recoil a bit, and missing some of the handling is not that bad when Willing Vessel does compensate. So that would make Hammer Forge Rifling third place with a very close, maybe almost tied with Small Bore, But once again, because Willing Vessel is granting stability in the first place, I think it just makes more sense to focus on the range and just get the stability from Willing Vessel. Moving on to the second column. First, we have accurized rounds. This increases range by plus 10, so this is pretty good right off the bat. Drop mag increases reload speed but reduces magazine size. Passively grants 30 reload speed with a 0.9 times reload duration multiplier. Decreases magazine stat by 30, equivalent to the inverse of extended mag. I mean, the reload stat is already pretty high, so you're going from 66 to 96, which isn't bad, but you do have to consider Willing Vessel also grants reload speed, which is plus 30, which is exactly what drop mag does. So realistically, you're gonna be at max stacks with Willing Vessel anyways. So the plus 30 in reload speed is completely redundant and just decreases your magazine stat. So this is straight up just a negative. So this perk is probably the worst in this column. Appended mag is a simple plus 5. It's fine. I don't like, to be honest, the 5 bullets, when you have a mag size that defaults to 46, it's not the greatest. I do think that appended mag is better than tactical mag though, because Willing Vessel will increase the reload speed. So who really cares about reload speed? Same with stability. It's also going to be increasing stability. So you're only going to get a plus 3 magazine, which is just worse than appended mag. And by the time you're dumping out like 50 bullets, it's like, okay, you've probably already at max stacks of Willing Vessel. So you're going to be maxed out on reload speed anyway. So kind of pointless. So extended mag is pretty decent actually, because reload speed does get compensated. However, the minus 20 is kind of harsh, but we do have a pretty high default, so we're only going down to 46. So honestly, that's not that bad. Like at 46, if we ignore the plus 30 from Willing Vessel, we're at a 1.87 second reload time, which it's not great, but it's not the worst thing ever for considering how many bullets you actually have, especially if you combine this with backup mag. Steady rounds decreases range, so I mean, you gain stability from Willing Vessel, so the minus in range is pretty bad. Still probably a little bit technically a bit better than drop mag, because at least you are gaining stability, which is not that bad. While drop mag, it's completely canceled out by max active Willing Vessel, so it's just a minus 30 in your mag stats. Still better than drop mag, but not great. Alloy mag, not bad. Faster reload when the magazine is nearly empty. Linearly grants a reload duration multiplier as your magazine drops from 50% capacity to empty. Reload duration multiplier scales from 0.9 times at 50% capacity to 0.8 times with an empty magazine. Combine that with Willing Vessel, which will max you out at like 96 reload speed. You're going to be reloading pretty fast, so not that bad of an option. Probably a bit overkill though, IMO. Flared mag, well, once again, optimized for fast reloading, plus 15 reload speed, plus 5 stability. Because of the Adamantite's naturally high reload speed, it's kind of wasted. So that makes accurized rounds a pretty clear best in slot for the second column by a large margin. I guess if you do want that more mag, I would then go for extended mag. But accurized round or extended mag, definitely going to go for accurized round, because I do think range is really important, and this weapon is lacking on range. All right, with the barrel and mag now gone over, we can finally move on to the juicy stuff, which are the traits. Starting from the top, we have reciprocity. When healing projectiles from this weapon strike allies, you also receive an increased amount of healing. Hitting allies with healing projectiles from the weapon restores 3.5 health to you for each projectile. Now, the enhanced version restores an additional 0.5 health per healing shot. I'm just going to be pretending that all the traits are enhanced, because you're probably going to enhance the weapon anyways. It's like, you're not going to be using the weapons while enhancing them. I mean, well, you can, but if you are going for like the god roll or whatever, you know, you're going to be enhancing them. So it is crazy to me that the support auto frames don't actually have healing to you built in, so you can only really heal your allies. So this fixes that flaw. I wouldn't be surprised if we get like an exotic auto support frame in the future that has healing built in, because obviously that's something that makes sense. So, and definitely when you're healing allies, sometimes you can't get in range, and so you have to get in the middle of a bunch of enemies. So when you're also taking damage and you're not able to heal that damage, it's kind of annoying. So honestly, reciprocity, if you are wanting to use it as intended as a support auto frame in order to heal your allies, you probably really do want reciprocity in order to make sure that you can also still stay alive. The baseline of 3 health per projectile is kind of low. 3.5 fixes it a bit. It's still a bit lower than I would like. I think like if the enhanced version granted it another 0.5 to 4 health, that'd probably be way better, but it's okay. It does its job. And honestly, when you're healing your allies in the middle of a bunch of ads and you're also taking damage and you're not healing yourself and you have to run into cover, so you're now unable to heal your allies, it's kind of whack. So you probably really do want reciprocity if you do want to be using this weapon to heal your allies, which you might not want to be doing, which is kind of a good thing from this auto rifle, as it's quite flexible, but we'll get into that in just a bit. Slice, casting your class ability, allows this weapon to sever targets on hit for an improved duration, up to a maximum number of targets. Using your class ability makes your next 5 hits within 9 seconds apply sever to targets. Activates even while stowed. Hitting a non-severed enemy refreshes the buff duration. Works even if the target is immune to damage. That's actually kind of important, but it's good to know because if you see an immune target, boom, hit it anyways, refresh your buff, and now you're able to move on to ads because the immune target is probably going to be the boss. And the boss, you're probably going to wait a couple seconds for the ads to spawn in depending on how the phasing works. So honestly, Sever, the 40% reduction in damage you take from them is pretty decent, and Slice makes it a pretty consistent way of applying it. Unrelenting. Rapidly defeating targets triggers improved health regeneration. Guardians and powerful combatants count as more than one target. Starts health regeneration and restores 70 health upon reaching 100% activation progress with weapon kills within 5 seconds of each. Activation progress by enemy rank. Minor combatants, 34%. Players, 67%. Not relevant in our case. Elites, mini-bosses, and bosses, 100%, so it instantly triggers that health regeneration. This is a pretty good perk, but personally, I don't think it's that good on this weapon, either for solo playing, which is, a completely separate component that, I'll get into depending on the perks, but that's where it would be more important. But when it comes to team play, there's no real synergy happening here when you're healing your allies, and you have to be, attacking enemies. So in order to trigger this, you're not leaning into the playstyle generated by the support frame. So while decent, and when you start killing a bunch of red bars and then heal HP, it's not bad. Like, regenerating health is pretty good. It's just that it doesn't really lean into one of the primary reasons to be using this weapon and, its main benefit. I also find Unrelenting to be better on special weapons because you can be guaranteed to get kills quickly on a bunch of red bars, or more importantly, on a mini boss or an elite in order to get that instant health regeneration proc. So while decent, it's kind of annoying having to rapidly kill, a couple of red bars, especially in higher level content when they might not be grouped together, or because especially since you are using a Bajukal weapon, like there's a little bit of a delay and, the consistency in your shots isn't completely there. Subsistence. Defeating targets partially reloads the magazine from reserves with an increased amount of ammo. Weapon kills refill 20% of the magazine, rounded up from reserves. Refill amount is increased by an additive 10%. 3% on submachine guns and auto rifles. The base rate on submachine guns and auto rifles is 17%, so enhancing subsistence on them does make it worse, but it evens out all the weapons to now 20% of the magazine. This is a pretty decent trait, but once again, it doesn't really provide any real utility to you while using your auto rifle as a support frame weapon. And in that case, you're not using it as a weapon, but you're using it to heal your allies. And there's no real synergy happening there, because if it did work, where based on the amount you're healing, it would also trigger subsistence and regen a portion of your magazine back to you, then it would be pretty crazy because you would continuously heal forever, especially since the unraveling rounds are basically doing a bit of damage, keeping your energy up. With subsistence, you would basically be able to hold mouse one and heal forever if it did have any synergy with healing, but it doesn't. So it doesn't really work out all the best in this case, because to be honest, I don't think you're going to be using this as like an ad slaying weapon. You could, but I don't think you're going to. And if you were, I do think there are still a couple better options. Your ensemble substantially improved handling and reload speed when allies are nearby. Grants 35 handling and 45 reload speed while within 15 meters of an ally. Buff lingers for 1.5 seconds once you are no longer near allies. Ensemble is by far the worst perk in this third column, mainly because handling and reload speed are something that is built in to this weapon thanks to origin trait Willing Vessel. So increasing those two, well, could be, they're good on other weapons, like having that increase in handling and reload speed are definitely good. But on this weapon, it's completely useless because of Willing Vessel. So Ensemble is completely pointless. Demolitionist. Final blows with this weapon generate an improved amount of grenade energy. Activating your ability reloads this weapon from reserves. Weapon kills grant 11% grenade ability energy. Kills with snipers, shotguns, glaives, blah, blah, blah. Using your grenade ability refills the magazine with a 3-second cooldown. So Demolitionist, great perk, getting kills, gives you back grenade ability energy, which in turn allows you to deal do more damage, which allows you to in turn get more ability energy back through whatever mods perk combination, blah blah blah. Activating your grenade ability also just reloads this weapon from reserves for free for no good reason, which is just like a hidden effect, which also just helps make this perk pretty great because, oh, you need to reload, oh, you have a grenade up, boom, throw out your grenade, boom, clear a bunch of ads, boom, you have your weapon reloaded, boom, you can continue shooting without having to reload, even though the reload speed is, not that bad. Pugilist's final blows with this weapon generate improved melee energy, dealing melee damage, briefly improves this weapon's handling. Weapon kills grant 11% melee ability energy. Dealing melee damage grants 35 handling for 3 seconds. This is good for all the reasons Demolitionist is good. I do wish it had something similar to where if you get a melee kill, also reloaded your weapon, because that does kind of make Demolitionist a little bit better. But once again, it's not, it's a bit better. Like the reload speed on this weapon is good enough. So maybe the extra handling is fine. But to be honest, you do have Willing Vessel. So it's like, do you need more handling? Like, do you really need that much more handling? But Pugilist itself, the fact that, you get 11% melee ability energy back is pretty good. If you plan on only leaning into the support frame benefits and want to heal your allies all the time, Reciprocity is really your only good option because it's the only trait in this third column that has any synergy with you healing your allies. Moving on to the fourth column. First up, we have Elemental Honing. Dealing unique elemental damage grants this weapon a stacking damage bonus for an improved duration. This bonus is increased for kinetic weapons. Dealing elemental damage grants a stack of elemental honing for 23 seconds for each unique element used, maximum of 5 stacks. Getting a stack refreshes the buff duration. Duration cannot be refreshed at 5 stacks. Buff can be activated while stowed. Kinetic damage does not trigger the buff. Weapon damage at the first stack is 2.5 and at the fifth stack 35%. So in theory, this perk can grant you 35% at 5 stacks. However, if you are on any subclass that isn't prismatic, and even depending on your loadout on prismatic, getting that 5 stacks can be a bit troublesome. So realistically, you're probably looking at 20% or 30%, which isn't terrible. Don't get me wrong, definitely not terrible. And if you're on prismatic, you're probably almost certainly going to get to 30% pretty consistently. But I think Elemental Honing makes no sense when we consider Circle of Life. Rapidly healing allies grants this weapon an improved period of increased damage. Triggering support frame boost by healing allies with the weapon grants 25% increased damage for 11 seconds. So just by healing allies, which is something you probably want to be doing if you're using this weapon, you then give yourself a 25% buff just like that without having to do any of the elemental stacking that you would have to do for Elemental Honing. And keep in mind, the support frame boost does grant us 10% damage. So with Circle of Life, we're basically effectively getting 35% increase in our damage. Sure, Elemental Honing is then technically 45% at max stacks. Once again, the activation requirement for Elemental Honing is, a little bit more complicated than just healing your ally. I will say though, I don't actually like Circle of Life either because I don't think the 25% increased damage boost is necessary for the healing playstyle at all. Like, I think it's kind of a waste. Like, sure, you can heal your ally, boom, do a bit more damage to some red bars, but it's like, is that really what I want to be doing with the Adamantite? I find the extra damage just mostly wasted because you're mainly healing your allies while they're in the middle of a group of ads. So while you're healing them, you're not really doing any damage to the ads while they're probably killing the ads. So while you're keeping them alive, you're not able to do any damage. So the damage mainly just goes unwasted because by the time you stop healing, like you can then switch to then shooting the enemies. And then maybe you have to reload. And then your teammates already, because they were able to stay alive, they were probably able to focus more on killing the enemies in the first place without having to worry about dying. So it just feels wasted. Also, I don't know if this is confirmed or not, but I think the damage buff probably does apply to the unraveling rounds, in which case it does make this perk a little bit better because if the unraveling rounds do a bit more damage, then you are getting back more weapon energy, which in turn does allow you to heal more. So I guess there could be that hidden synergy if Circle of Life does increase the damage done by your unraveling rounds generated from the support frame, which I don't really see a reason why it wouldn't be. I mean, it's intrinsic and it's being generated by the weapon. So I assume because it's being generated by the weapon, the perk would then apply the damage increase to the unraveling round since it's generated by the weapon. Hatchling is a perk we skipped over. Precision Final Blows, or rapidly defeating targets with this weapon, spawns a thread link at the target's location. It also passively improves handling. Upon scoring a precision kill or 3 kills within 3 seconds of each it spawns a thread link on enemy death location. This perk is pretty decent, probably not as good as destabilizing rounds, but still for ad clear, you definitely want hatchling. However, it does fall into the problem of not really synergizing with healing. So in which case, Circle of Life still technically is a better option out of these two if you are focused on healing, even if I don't think it's, the best because the damage just kind of wasted. Tear precision final blows cause nearby targets to become severed. Cooldown between activations reduced. Now, I like severing, so theoretically, I really wanted to like Tear, and I think I do like the perk. I just don't like it on this weapon because trying to get precision final blows with the projectiles is just frustrating. It's the only way I was able to be a bit more consistent in getting those precision final blows is when I was pushing closer to a group of ads, in which case I did roll something like Unrelenting Tear in order to keep me alive while punishing red bars. But I did find that just to be kind of a waste of the weapon. It's like, sure, I'm pushing up and killing red bars and applying Tear, but it's like, I'm having to hard focus on using my primary, and it's like, I just feel like, this is slower than what it could be. And it's like, it doesn't really have that much synergy generation happening here. It's like, well, I'm using the weapon to mainly do ad clear, which it does work, but the lack of any synergy with any builds is, it was just whatever. Like Tear, I think Tear, if it also worked like Hatchling, where instead of it just being precision final blows, it also triggered on rapidly defeating targets, then I think it would be much better on those weapons. Another problem with Tear is the Severing Blast is really small. I think when I searched it up, it was like 5 meters, which is terrible. In theory, this seems okay, but in practice, ads, when they grouped up, they would just not stand close enough to each other. Like, oh, I'd maybe get the precision final blow on one thrall, and then there'd be one other thrall that'd be next to it, and that would get severed. But because the sever doesn't chain into the group, it's like, oh, well, I've now severed one thrall, and there's a bunch of other thralls that are just still there, not severed. Like, if they enhancing the trait increased the distance of the Severing Blast like 7 meters, it'd probably be better. Like, but I'd also think like the rapid final blows would also be better. But so if either the Severing Blasts were increased in size, or if Tear triggered on rapid final kills in addition to precision final blows, this would be much better on this weapon. But in the case of this weapon, I think if you do want to apply Sever, Slice is far better. It's not that Tear is bad, it's just that this weapon is just not meant to get precision final blows at all. Attrition Orbs. Dealing sustained damage creates a slightly improved Orb of Power. Scoring multiple hits against enemies within 5 seconds of each spawns an Orb of Power that grants 1.1% super energy. Does not require direct hits. Hit counter persists through stow. So for auto rifles, it's 67% of the magazine size, rounded down +2. However, since we are on a support frame, according to the Destiny Data Compendium, we do receive some benefits. So on support auto rifles, that's 67% of the magazine is reduced in half to 33.5% of the magazine, +2, rounded down on healing hits on damaged allies. This basically means we generate orbs while healing at twice the rate as we do dealing damage. I'm also pretty sure that these two are tracked separately, so it's not one or the other, or combined, which would be interesting, but it's separate, so you can generate orbs while dealing damage and generate orbs while healing. So there is a dual benefit, and there is that synergy with the support frame. So honestly, I think Attrition Orbs is really, really, really good on this weapon, and personally, my preferred choice when going for that support playstyle. While Circle of Life just increases your damage, Attrition Orbs is generating Orbs of Power, which then has multiple benefits according to whatever mods you have, and it does grant you super energy, which is always really good. So because you can generate orbs on kills and on heals, that synergy makes it really good. You get so many orbs. It feels good. It really does feel good. Big fan of Attrition Orbs. Frenzy, being in combat for an extended time, increases damage handling and reload for this weapon for an improved duration until you are out of combat. After being in combat for 12 seconds, grants 15% increased damage, 100 handling, and 100 reload speed for 7.2 seconds. Works and can activate while stowed. Dealing and receiving damage refreshes the buff duration. For Frenzy, being in combat is defined as having either dealt or received damage within the last 5 seconds. This Frenzy is a good perk. It's just completely useless on this weapon because of Willing Vessel. Willing Vessel fixes stability, handling, and reload speed issues. So Frenzy, while normally good, completely useless on the Adamantite IMO. Speaking of completely useless, Kill Clip, reloading after defeating a target grants increased damage for an improved duration. Upon finishing a reload within 3.6 seconds of a weapon kill, 25% increased damage for 5.5 seconds. Buff is removed on stow. The 25% increase in damage is good. It's just that when this specific weapon has Circle of Life, which grants you that 25% increase in damage just from healing an ally, which also gives you that 10% support frame buff, which then totals at 35%. Circle of Life is just far superior than Kill Clip, so Kill Clip is completely useless. Even Elemental Honing is probably better because 4 stacks, at least on Prismatic, is not completely unlikely. Moving on to Masterworks, I mean, I guess technically this is personal preference, and if we do take a look at the stats, even if we do get an increase in stability, it's still kind of low. So if you do want to compensate some of the range by going stability here, that's probably fine. However, if you do just want to maximize that range, which I would choose to do, then I think range is what you want to go for your Masterwork. Reload speed, completely pointless. As for mods, currently, because it is a seasonal weapon, I would recommend going on Power Resolve because the extra utility from the Taken Seater is good. I wouldn't try to use it against Unstoppables. I tried, but oh man, that Taken Seeker is just so inconsistent. I guess that might be a phalanx problem because the shield is absolutely massive, but I was having problems trying to get consistent stuns against Unstoppables. Even with this on, I just do think it's good for the Taken Seeker projectile, which disrupts and deals extra damage, which is good. Armaments of Resolve, +5 aim assist, +5 recoil direction. It's here if you want to use it while we have it. You can. It's also important to note that the weapon is overcharged when that modifier is active, which might be important depending on what activity you're doing. So, and Willbreaker munitions increases damage versus Dread and taking targets. If you're going to Nether and you just want to put this on to get guaranteed damage, it's fine. I just rock on with Power Resolve. Although, if once the season is done and over with, you're probably going to be just running backup mag. Although, if you do want to run Counterbalance because the reload speed is good enough that you don't really care about the +8 mag, then you can just go Counterbalance, fix that recoil. Not too bad. All right, so that means for my personal God roll, for the support version of the Adamantite, I would go for Full Bore, Accurized Rounds, Reciprocity, and Attrition Orbs with the range Masterwork. As a solo weapon, personally, I do think you still want to keep the range because Willing Vessel does compensate for stability, handling, reload speed. So honestly, just more range is fine, especially since if you are using it solo, especially in harder content, you probably are going to be a bit further away. So I would just stick with range. And so that's once again Full Bore, Accurized Rounds. However, personally, I would opt for something like Demolitionist and Hatchling or Pugilist Hatchling, depending on the build I'm going with. Because if I am using this weapon, I probably do want to be on a more strength-oriented build. So that's not too bad. And Hatchling helps with the ad clear. I guess you could go Attrition Orbs, but I think Attrition Orbs, when you're using it as more of the support weapon, being able to generate orbs on heals and from enemies, that dual utility makes it doubly useful. So while it's still fine, I think it is worse than if you wanted to use it as a more support option. If Terror was also in rapid hits, that would be a decent option, but I like Hatchling, so them Hatchling if you are going for the more solo playstyle. Like I said though, there's honestly quite a lot of good perk combinations, so while Reciprocity and Attrition Orbs is my obvious choice to go to for support, I think Slice and Tear are not too bad if you just want to continuously apply Sever if you are also playing with a fire team or in a group setting, because if you're the one just applying Sever at everything and everything is dealing less damage, that's still pretty good. The Precision Final Blows obviously still hurts, but in a fire team, it is less problematic, especially if you're also applying Sever in order to get up close in the first place in order to then apply Terror. So the Slice Terror, if you really want to go for that pure Sever force. All right, that's it for the Adamantite. Let me know what your personal favorite combination is in the comments down below.